with all of the Iran talk and the China talk, sort of like I forgot Russia. But Russia's still there, although they're not as much there as they used to be. They went into Ukraine imagining a very swift and decisive victory. But after 4 years now, their energy and business sectors are beginning to fray. And while the world is focused on the Iranian negotiating style, many may have missed that Russia uses those same tactics. Because both of them go into negotiations not trying to be honest, but they're looking for tools for strategic messaging and pressure and delay. And they do it that way because it's always worked. But when it comes to Russia today, Donald Trump is dealing with a very badly weakened nation. Russia anticipated a very swift, decisive campaign in Ukraine. Instead, the war has exposed the limits of their military and political reach. Ukraine, which Vladimir Putin expected to fracture or fold, did the exact opposite. They absorbed the initial shock, and then they adapted, and then they started pushing back. And it wasn't about them just redrawing maps here. They shattered a very widely held belief by a lot of people that Russia's conquest was inevitable, that the Russian military machine was this gigantic behemoth that could not be stopped. Now, NATO is beginning to respond, albeit very lethargically, and at least with the European NATO countries, they're very unified on this one. So consequently, they started to write big checks to forestall a possibility of a Russian win. And as it grinds on, the strains within Russia are evident. Their internal security apparatus shows signs of fatigue and fragmentation. All of the industry that makes all of their military hardware is not able to keep pace with what they lose in the battleground. And, well, one thing about Russia, they've always relied very heavily for revenue from their energy sector. And that's beginning to show weakness as well. Russia is not on the brink of collapse, but Ukraine has forced Russia into a war that it's not winning. And there's rumors, of course, there's always rumors in wars, that there are internal security threats to people like Putin and defections that are increasing daily. Which leads to what may be, in Russia's case, an underappreciated issue. We've seen how it works out when you are receiving supply, and we've seen how it worked with Iran. We've seen what happens when they can't supply people, and we've seen what happens when they can't get any revenue from it. And Russia is much in the same sort of predicament. They don't, their ability is declining to refine oil and gas products and to produce enough diesel. And they have to keep their own population in the dark about how precarious their position is. And Ukraine is hitting oil infrastructure in Russia. They're hitting pressure points. And they are going and using what all of the cool battle guys would call the very classic asymmetric strategy. And they're not trying to take out their energy sector. No. They're forcing Moscow to confront vulnerabilities it pretends doesn't exist. They're hitting refineries and storage sites and they've taken capacity offline. They disrupted regional fuel supply and compelled Russia to take their air defense and move it off the battlefield. Now they're having to put it where their assets are. So Ukraine found something that Russia has trouble defending against. And Ukraine has targeted 1/3 of the Russian refining capacity. And every time they hit them, this forces Russia to scramble and try to stand up inadequate defense against an innovative Ukrainian strategy. But Russia also depends heavily on foreign technology for refinery and production equipment. So, the kind of things they get from foreign countries is something called the SCADA automation. Couldn't tell you what that is if I had to. Compressors, desulfurization technology, catalytic cracking units, fire suppression equipment, hydro crackers, simple things like sensors, valves, and more. And they get it from companies like Honeywell and Emerson and Schneider Electric and Siemens and Kawasaki and Yokogawa in Japan. And now all of those companies are barred from supplying Russia. They're also very heavily dependent on foreign engineering with U.S., Japanese, South Korean, and European contractors, all now barred from helping Russia. So they've been having to improvise. And if I didn't know this about the petrochemical business, but apparently the first rule of business in the petrochemical business is don't improvise, because that's inherently dangerous. And every day that passes, their problems accumulate and expand. And apparently they're taking a long time to repair some of this stuff. Ryazan took 6 months to restore full capacity, and then Ukraine hit it again. Volgograd is still offline. Tuapse was offline for half a year. Salavat is only now coming back online. They have limited resources, and resources are a lot of things, personnel, equipment, and expertise. And they have limited in that to bring this back online. So what's happening here is they're reducing export revenue. They're increasing domestic shortage. They're raising military logistics costs, which that'll slit your throat in a military operation when you start losing logistics. They're forcing Russia to import certain refined products. They're straining their budget, and the political pressure within Russia is causing panic because nobody knows what the future holds now. And all of these deep strike actions from Ukraine probably will not end a war, but they have what makes it good is challenging the Russian narrative coming out of the Kremlin. This war is going to be a cumulative thing. It's like a back injury. It's going to build up over time. And it's good for us to be able to take these notes and look at all these things, because we keep getting told that Russia, we would surely lose against Russia. Have you ever tried to reason with a leftist? This is News Talk 98.9 WORD. I have a rule I try to live by. And I do fairly well on my side anyway. If you're my friend or my relative, I will not let politics interfere with our dynamic. I simply will not. And, well, sometimes I am, I fall short of that one. I fall short of that one sometimes. Not because I won't go that way, not because I won't hold myself to that particular standard, but my friends or relatives may not. And when it gets to the point of, unfortunately, when it gets to the point of there's no chance of any sort of a positive return on this, I just have to withdraw. I don't cut them off. I don't have to, because I would love to hear from them. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I do not. So, like, I know, like, my favorite record store that I don't want to, because that guy there is all about the love of music. And so he and I see past other things. Politics are a very toxic thing. Okay? They're a very toxic thing. And that's not really the lens we should look at each other as far as our relationships are concerned. Our one-on-one relationships. Now, once again, I have a better, it's easier for me to keep up my side of the bargain on that one than it is for some that are dominated by politics. So there'll be something coming up like illegal aliens. And you point out a bunch of things. Well, they'll point out a bunch of things. They're just trying to build a better life. They pay taxes. Only a few of them commit crimes. And then, you could counter with the usual arguments. They're in the country illegally. Many are engaged in horrific crimes. They're using up the welfare system, and that Democrats have been employing the illegals to engage in fraudulent elections. Nothing works. Now, if, then you could get out there and, maybe try to gather your own information, do your own polling, and, you'd find out some things, and just do it for a month. Like the Pakistani that killed an American in a head-on collision. A Guatemalan raped an underage girl in Florida. Another Guatemalan murdered a young teenage boy, luring him with the promise of sex. In South Carolina, an illegal alien who was so drunk he could not stand was driving a vehicle and killed 2 black children on their bicycles. In San Antonio, an illegal alien punched a Mexican-American mother in the face, then proceeded to bite the face of her 3-year-old daughter, who lost 2 teeth. An illegal alien from El Salvador stabbed 2 women to death at a Wendy's. Nigerian, with previous arrests for assault and criminal drug possession, weaponized his vehicle to try to hit ICE officers. A Venezuelan stabbed a man at a bench, then tried to slit his throat. An illegal alien from India drove a truck at 124 miles per hour, crashed into another vehicle, and killed a pregnant woman. In Virginia, an illegal alien engaged in a carjacking, then ran over the woman with the same vehicle. A Honduran who previously had been deported 4 times and had killed American citizens killed another American in New York, a 83-year-old Air Force veteran. In Virginia, an illegal immigrant who assaulted 9 high school kids was sentenced to 180 days in jail by a leftist judge, of course. It just goes on and on. It just goes on and on. And that could warn you, who entered the country illegally 4 times. Kidnapped a little girl from a laundromat. The judge released him with an ankle monitor. So, first of all, if you actually look at that stuff, you're going to be going, wow, I didn't know it'd be this many. One case that is relevant to the whole issue and will tell you a lot is the case of an American citizen who claimed that ICE had detained her for 2 days and received a lot of publicity for it and some outrage. And in reality, she spent those 2 days at a spa which was not run, incidentally. It was not run by the Immigration Customs Enforcement, not run by them. Now, you could take those once you compile all that stuff. And I mean, as you look at it, you become aware of how tedious all this is. And you would think that they would see this factual proof in front of them and have an epiphany and renounce their whole stand on illegal aliens and immigration. But they won't do it because nothing gets through to them. They, nothing gets, they're not going to change their minds. They have an enviable talent for maintaining their views despite facts and reason. And I have seen this in more cases than not. A leftist never has to have any proof at all in order to believe a lie. But they do have to have reams and reams and reams of evidence to believe in a truth. And do you give up? Do you give up? Because I fear the giving up part. I really do. I fear giving up. Because like Charlie Kirk said, if we can't maintain some sense of discourse, what have we got left? What have we got left? So, while President Trump was in China as he was leaving, they're saying that President Xi Jinping passed him a slip of paper. What was on the slip of paper? Well, to find out what was on the slip of paper, we're going to talk to Michael Letts from investusa.org. This is News Talk 98.9 WORD. sometimes you do things that seem counterintuitive, and it might lead you somewhere. And then all of that counterintuitive second guessing just goes away if you gain a little ground. Joining us to look at an instance of this from investusa.org is Michael Letts. Good afternoon, sir.
Always a privilege to be with you, Bill. We thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So the other day, Donald Trump got on Air Force One and flew out to China to go sit down with Xi Jinping and talk. And a lot of people are like, why are you going to go talk with him?
Well, there's a lot of good reasons to go talk to him.
Right.
One is you have to remember this adage because it really does work. You know, Daddy used to always say, keep your friends close, but keep your enemies closer.
Right.
And if you keep that in mind and you have that mindset, you can get a lot of things accomplished. Well, one of the things that the president paramount on his concern was, of course, we talked about it, yesterday, making sure that we partner with to bring the Iranian conflict to a resolution. But because of the fact that they actually talked about things they agree with, and, Trump brought all the major CEOs from across America to meet about economic opportunities as well, that President of China warmed up extremely well, warmed up so well that he slipped the President of the United States a couple of pieces of paper. And when the president had the chance to open them up, what we discover is a list of people who have been being paid by communist China to have back channels or to discuss diplomacy and foreign affairs with instead of the commander-in-chief. And actually what they've all told their Chinese counterparts is don't do anything with this administration, with this commander-in-chief. He's unstable. If you have any concerns or any questions, go through us. Now, that would seem really kind of odd that you would do that, kind of even hard to believe. But the fact of the matter is we know that General Miley, it was well publicized, did the same thing with China when he was the commander of the Joint Chiefs during Trump's first term.
Right.
So we know this is not unheard of. And in fact, General Miley's name is on that list, but there are not one or two others. There are quite a few others. Democratic senators, Democratic members of Congress, as well as other general officers. That gives us a good lead as to what infection has occurred within our military ranks and what needs to be cleaned out. I can assure you of this. That list is not going to be put in a shredder and go away, nor is it going to go over to anybody else like the CIA or somebody else who would have the chance to suddenly make it disappear or to change or to warn people ahead of time. We've got information now that nobody else has, and we will be pursuing it vigorously to vet it because we always do that. We don't take anybody's word for it, which is what we should do.
Right.
We'll vet it, and knowing that there is an awful lot of elements of truth being here, you're going to start seeing some heads roll, and you're going to start seeing it pretty quickly. And on this particular issue, Bill, I don't know that heads should just roll. This is treason.
Right.
This is, you can't be going to America's enemies and saying, let me feed your information and don't pay the commander-in-chief any credence because we'll cut some deals behind the scenes with you instead. That's the fair definition of treason. I don't see them getting off very lightly, and I don't think this president's going to let them get off very lightly. So this is a scandal fixing to unveil, fixing to break open.
I wonder how long it'll take to vet all of this stuff because it's just names, right?
That's correct.
But I know that, in the entirety of Donald Trump's, both of his terms, he's always had leakers.
Correct.
So is this going to be one of these things where we're either going to know who we know about Milley because, he got out there and talked about it. I mean, he was stupid enough to talk about it. And I guess he thought that he could talk about it because nothing was ever going to happen to him.
That's what he thought. And
yeah.
He's been right to this point, except for military tribunals. We know for a fact they have been convened. We're waiting to be charged, and the military tribunal can reinstate him back, recall him back to active duty to face criminal charges. So now one of the things you said, you know, is it just names? It's not just names. It's dollar amounts as to how much they were paid. Gives us a vetting point to find out where accounts it went to for us to validate and to make sure that they say it went to the XYZ account, to make sure this particular person's on the XYZ account so that they actually receive the money.
Right.
We have pretty much, they've laid it out to where it shouldn't be speculative. It should be very easy to vet, and we're doing that now.
Will this be something that we'll actually see some action on? I mean, we got 3.5 years left or 2.5 years left of this term.
I don't think there's any question you're going to see action. I think the question is going to be what kind of action and when. I don't think the president has digested it long enough to know exactly how he wants to play it out just yet. But I do know this: he is beyond pissed, and yes, it will be dealt with.
Now, I know that with Trump that we have this problem, and I mean, he learned, basically he learned from the Trump 1.0. He did have to get rid of Kristi Noem. He made turned out not to be, and Pam Bondi. Those two turned out to be not good choices, but it's not like it was the last time where he actually had opposition in his cabinet versus just a bunch of self-serving people. Do we see this with other presidential administrations? Are there other administrations where there are people that are working with him but against him at the same time, or is this just uniquely a Donald Trump issue?
Well, let's phrase it. What is unique about Donald Trump? It's unique to Donald Trump. Questions it, challenge it, and is trying to rid ourselves of it. What happens to most of the other administrations, or all the other administrations, I should say most, this is the first time it's ever occurred with Donald Trump,
right? Is
they come in, they get you sidetracked with doing so many things. They run their own show anyway, talking about the triple letter agencies, etc.
Right.
And just give you false intelligence reports. And we've seen that happen repeatedly, not just in this administration, in previous ones. They've been running the show. And of course, from the previous administration standpoint, I don't want any controversy. I just want to be thought of as did my job as president, didn't have any controversy my whole term, and I should be considered a nice guy as I walk out the door. Not Donald Trump. He doesn't care what you think of it. He wants to make sure it gets cleaned up.
Yeah, I could see where that would be the case. I could see where that would be the case. Although, we'll just have to pick this up next week, because as with all things, when we get into the deep end of the pool, we do a lot of swimming really fast. So anyway, Michael Letts runs investusa.org. And investusa.org has actually, no matter what you've heard, given 19,000 vests to law enforcement and their K-9 colleagues. And I said that simply because of some things that popped up the other day. And he's not going to rest until everybody's in a vest. investusa.org. Thank you for joining me today, sir.
Thank you. God bless. God bless America.
All right. Now, just in case you forgot, let me explain to you how the Democrats spit on the democratic process. This is News Talk 98.9 WORD. Democrats always cast themselves as the saviors. They're always going to roll in and they're always going to save somebody from something because there's always a bad guy. They always have a bad guy. Now, what you probably forgotten, well, you probably haven't forgotten it, but for a lot of people, this has fallen by the wayside. Joe Biden unanimously won the nomination for the Democratic side for 2024. And then he did the debate and live, nobody thought to call that one a deep fake or, AI or any of that other stuff. We got to see him at his best in that debate in June of 2024. What was it, June 28th, June 29th? So then the Democrats, they just anointed Kamala Harris. No votes, no consensuses, no referendums, just anointed her. They didn't ask the rank or file Democrats what they wanted to do. Oh, no. They all sat down, did their little confab. Joe Biden, of course, he threw a little political hand grenade in the tent by endorsing Scamala, but, yeah. The Democrats cast themselves as this gigantic Star Trek-like shield protecting American democracy. And if you look at that and go back to the 2018 midterms, they portrayed the contest as a desperate stand to safeguard voting rights and checks and balances and the rule of law itself. The blue candidates hammered home investigations and alleged oversight as purportedly essential barriers to Trump's influence. And they delivered a house flip in a massive blue wave. And this theme has only gotten louder. Joe Biden launched his campaign in 2020 by declaring democracy to be a sacred cause. But once he got in office, he still continued to say that the MAGA Republicans and Trump were endangering the republic's survival. And he pointed out election disputes, which the Democrats have done every time. Well, not every time. They certainly did it with George W. and they did it with Donald Trump. And January 6th and all that other stuff. And Harris carried the same banner in 2024, framing her campaign as the last line of defense for institutions and norms. And even after Trump and the congressional Republicans trounced the blue team, they are clinging to that script today. But once again, coming out of Virginia, we see what happens. They want to flip the House. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to redraw these maps, right? And in the case of Virginia, they were held back by their own constitution. And yet they tried to do it anyway. They had a 6-5 split going into this, and they wanted to turn it into a 10-1. Just make 4 new Democrat seats out of this. Now, that would disenfranchise a whole bunch of voters. Because there's, probably about, 45% of Virginia is Republican. They made a deliberate attempt to bypass constitutional guardrails. And not too long ago, they were all out for these reforms to end gerrymandering, but they did the opposite here for the raw advantage. And now they have a 4-3 decision against them, and they're, right now the Democrats are floating ideas to pack or overhaul the Virginia Supreme Court. They're talking about packing our Supreme Court. So, yeah, these guys are not saviors of anything. These are simply power-hungry people. They just want to be in charge of you. They want your money. They want a lot of things from you. So look at Virginia and look at the democratic process that the DNC stomped all over in 2024. And that'll tell you what the Democrats think of their democracy. Their democracy only counts when it's Democrats. That's the only time it ever counts. Here we are, here in South Carolina, and our senators are going soft on redistricting. And they're going to leave seats on the table here. This is News Talk 98.9 WORD. I ask the question on a regular basis, why aren't we number one in the nation? And I'm constantly reminded why we're not number one in the nation by our General Assembly. There's just, no getting past it. No getting past it. Now, other Republicans in various states are jumping all over redistricting. In Florida, for example, they passed a new congressional map that could extend their GOP edge to 24-4, up from 20-8 on the prior map. But then, all of this this all came down to a decision where the U.S. Supreme Court, in Louisiana v. Calais, ended the requirement that many southern states retain Democratic seats. And all in all, the Center for Politics at the University of Virginia estimates that Republicans will net somewhere between 6 and 10 in the House of Representatives. They say that, this is a redistricting deficit that we favor Democrats to overcome. It could be enough for the GOP to save their House majority under right circumstances. I don't know. Have you seen what you guys are selling? 2 additional seats out of Indiana would also have been very helpful, but the Republican caucus of the Indiana State Senate had other ideas, so they blocked it. So Donald Trump and National Republicans rallied and primaried 6 out of the 8 anti-redistricting GOP state senators who are up for re-election in 2026. So Indiana won't be able to redraw until 2028. And there are other solidly Republican states that have room to eliminate Democratic districts. And in Tennessee, the GOP almost immediately redrew the Memphis-based 9th district, represented by Democratic Representative Steve Cohen, into a deeply GOP seat. And yet, many other, and this tells me all I need to know, there's some people that look at South Carolina and say, South Carolina is a deeply red state. And South Carolina did overwhelmingly vote for Trump in 2024. Now, Louisiana, Alabama, and South Carolina have 5 Democratic-leaning congressional districts. All of them could be eliminated if there was the political will to do so. We are talking about South Carolina, indeed, because the political will seems to be somewhat lacking. So it seems like 2 or 3 Democrat-leaning seats may survive in those states due to Republicans being unwilling to pass maps that maximize GOP strength. Louisiana is a good example. The Victory Party in the Calais decision, they want it there, and they currently have 2 Democratic-leaning seats: the New Orleans-based 2nd district and the 6th district, which snakes across much of the center of the state to take in the Democrat-leaning areas. So on May 14th, the Louisiana State House approved a map that would make the 6th district Republican-leaning, but largely left the 2nd district intact. And this would have to be signed into law by Governor Jeff Landry. It would be trivially easy to make all of this favorable to the GOP, but for whatever reason, they want to let the Democrats keep a seat. Trump got out there and told the American Spectator, "I trust Governor Landry, Attorney General Merle, and our legislature to deliver the fair constitutional maps Louisiana deserves. What hasn't changed is this: the U.S. Senate race is still on the May 16th ballot, and every Louisiana Republican voter deserves to hear their voice heard. Now get out and vote. Let's send a conservative Trump-endorsed senator to Washington who always put Louisiana first." Like Louisiana, but Alabama has 2 Democratic congressional districts, and they appear set to only make one of them GOP leaning. Now, the Supreme Court said you can't get out and make these districts. You can't gerrymander them. You can't redistrict them based upon race, but you can redistrict them based on politics. Now, 65% of Alabamians voted for President Trump in the last election, and Alabama doesn't have a single Democrat statewide elected office. If you head up the East Coast, there are states where 40% of voters are Republicans, and they have zero representation, and that's not right. So it is good that we got this decision. And, it'd be nice if we could accurately reflect our politics here, on the ground anyway. That'd be nice. But here we have South Carolina State Senator Majority Leader Shane Massey, a Republican, and that's what he tells us anyway. He gave a 47-minute speech before voting no. And he was joined by 4 other Republicans. And that was enough for Democrats to block the special session from being called. I want to ask you guys a question, Republicans in the General Assembly. What's the point of us having a supermajority? We don't get nothing out of you. We don't deserve effective government in our state. Now, of course, McMaster has called the special session. But why are so many elected Republicans so intransient about protecting Democrat congressional representation? Especially when they seem to be willing to sacrifice their career over it. And if you look at Indiana, there's no question that that's exactly what they're doing. Now, I don't know if that'll happen here because we keep reelecting the same guys to the state house. Now, there are those that think that, we on the Republican side are so tired of the Republicans who do nothing that we'll just let the Democrats come in and take over state government, take over the federal government, all that other fuss, all those fussy little details. Do you think that's the truth? Do you believe that's we're going to let happen? So, now I am fed up with the South Carolina State GOP. I'm not so fed up with them that I want us to be a Democrat state. I'm fed up being purple. It don't take much for me to get fed up. I mean, these guys they're just, I don't know. I don't know how to put it. I don't know how to consider it. So, we got to do something about this. We have to do something about this. South Carolina doesn't need to be this sort of a state. We need to set the example, not wait on everybody else to do it and watch and see what everybody does. If you look at AOC today, she seems to be evolving, and that is something that we should notice. This is News Talk 98.9 WORD. I haven't really been seeing very much out of AOC lately, but she may be the first Democrat socialist to fully understand the political world that Donald Trump has accidentally created. And this should concern the GOP a lot more than another round of eye rolling every time she opens her mouth. Daily Wire did a poll, and they now show AOC leading potential Democrat candidates for 2028. And the right may still be looking at her all wrong, because she seems to be sharpening up lately. Either she's developing a better political vocabulary, or somebody finally hired a tutor to explain how the actual world works outside of an activist circle. Does this make her right? Well, no. But it does make her more politically dangerous than many Republicans probably would like to admit. And in the new presidential poll, AOC's at 26%, Buttigieg 22%, Newsom 21%, Harris 13%, Bashir 4%, Booker 4%. Now, a lot of people look at her as internet entertainment. And a lot of conservatives have turned her into online content. Every weird quote becomes a meme. Every economic faceplant becomes another clip. But while the conservatives are out there laughing, of course, the Democrats also laugh at Trump. Problem is, younger voters are not watching those clips the same way older Republicans are. A lot of younger voters do not care if she occasionally drifts into activist rambling. They do care that she sounds emotionally invested. They care that she sounds certain. And most of all, they think she believes what she is saying. Now, Kamala Harris never figured that out. Kamala Harris, instead, like in the radio business, a lot of guys, and especially politics, a lot of guys want to get out there and they want to be liked by everybody. And that just ain't going to happen. That just ain't going to happen. You got to take a stand. You got to get out there and state your case and then try to prove it, whether you're in politics or the media. Kamala Harris never figured that out. She often sounded like somebody trying to become whatever the room needed her to be that day. AOC seems to come off now like somebody who decided exactly who she is. Certainty, whether you agree with it or not. Republicans still seem to think embarrassment automatically ends political careers. That version of politics disappeared a long time ago. Half the country now chooses candidates the same way people choose podcasts and influencers and online personalities. They want confidence, they want emotion, they want connection, and somebody who just sounds real to them. Ask Donald Trump. That's how he got there in the first place. And this is the political environment that Republicans helped create during the Trump years. And the Republicans may still be underestimating how naturally she fits into this now. She understands this. The need to sound real, the need to sound engaged. Now, in this article with the Daily Wire, they praise AOC for calling out Marjorie Taylor Greene as toxic and extreme. And, the funny thing is that the Republicans did the same thing themselves. They treated Marjorie Taylor Greene like an embarrassing family member at Thanksgiving. And that was okay. She was, but now AOC gets to walk in sounding like the adult in the room by comparison. And not that Marjorie alone decides the future of American politics. The larger issue is perception. And the mocking and distancing from MTG was her fault. And meanwhile, younger voters watching all this are not sitting around analyzing white papers and policy details. They're reacting emotionally to confidence and energy and certainty. And AOC, she's not Zamdani. AOC, she protects all of that for them. But she also noticed Zamdani. That's the thing. because AOC does have influence with younger voters. She helped energize support for a socialist, Zohran Mamdani, and Bernie Sanders, and built an entire political movement the same way years earlier. And the younger progressives respond to movement far more than carefully rehearsed political messaging. Political messaging is way too rehearsed, way too canned, right? Way too canned. The MAGA movement, not really a rehearsed movement. Not really a rehearsed movement. So don't underestimate AOC and her little crowd. Some of us still think voters compare policy platforms before they make a decision. For younger voters, their thought process is cluttered with emotion and culture first. They support people who sound authentic to them, even when the policies themselves are a mess. It seems to me in a lot of ways that Republicans are still fighting. We're still fighting the way politics used to be. Now, AOC still has problems. She's way too emotional under pressure. And emotional politics is practically the entire business model now. But when she gets emotional, she becomes less certain. And that's a thing. That is definitely a thing. Now, traditional media also no longer really controls political communication the way it once did. And AOC already has social media and live streams and podcasts and viral clips and millions of followers who trust her more than cable news anyway. Republicans still think presidential politics revolves around Sunday shows and newspaper interviews, while younger voters are getting their political worldview from TikTok clips while sitting in the Starbucks drive-thru. Now, one of the other problems she has is the centrists are not going to like her at all, but how many of those are left? So we need to be paying attention to her. We do. Now then, the Trump administration has decided now to pursue the very violent leftists. That's good news. This is News Talk 98.9 WORD. Just got a text. What is the phone number to the White House? You realize you just texted that to me on a smartphone, that you could look that up yourself, right? You got that, right? So you want me to do the search for you. Probably not going to happen. The jihadis and the cartels are now targets of the new White House counterterrorism strategy. But also, so too are Antifa, Trontifa, and the other violent domestic left-wing anti-American groups. And that's a nice change. A very sharp departure from the Biden administration's very sinister national strategy on counterterrorism. They pretended groups like Antifa didn't exist, and instead they targeted the Catholics at traditional mass. And they targeted parents questioning gender ideology at a school board meeting. And they targeted Donald Trump supporters who Biden told us repeatedly were ultra MAGA and semi-fascist, which we were ultra make America great again. That's bad. So hence the January 6th Capitol riot by unarmed Trump supporters, most of whom committed no violence and many of whom did not even enter the Capitol, became the biggest investigation in FBI history under Biden, which also led to one of the biggest miscarriages of justice in American history under anybody. So, President Trump's White House counterterrorism director, Sebastian Gorka, has reoriented national security back toward violence rather than some vague anti-government or anti-authority sentiment, which can be easily and was under Biden weaponized politically. Gorka was on something called Pod Force One. He said, "We're just basing our threat assessment on reality. Whether you're trying to kill journalists, whether you're creating disorder against the rule of law in our country, or do I have to mention the name of my friend Charlie Kirk? Do I have to talk about the multiple left-wing attempts to kill Donald Trump? We're not going to whistle past the graveyard. We're not going to say that it doesn't exist. We're going to use every legal tool in our 17 intelligence agencies and our domestic law enforcement through the DOJ to prevent the violent left-wing lunacy from taking another life, whether it's a journalist, whether it's a president, or whether it's a brave patriot like Charlie Kirk. Simply engaging in civilized debate on a college campus. We will not allow people to use force against those they politically disagree with." I think a lot of times, and this is a very interesting thing that he points out, because we talk about what happened to Charlie Kirk and we all wring our hands and, oh, how horrible. Oh, how this, how that. He was just talking. That's all he ever did, was just talk. He would go places, he would face hostile crowds, and he would talk to them. Very effectively, I might add. But this was not something that we could allow to go on. You understand this, right? We just couldn't allow him to be talking to people. Now, since the summer of love, a lot of people have been feeling trapped, and I understand that. Those organized left-wing militias, the well-funded Antifa-style terrorists, when they hijacked, Black Lives Matter protests, trying to turn that from, just mere subjugation based upon guilt to a violent overthrow of Trump. And they got their wish. Part of Trump's 2020 defeat, or his inability to win enough votes to overcome the Democrats' sly election rigging, has to be attributed to this sense of chaos. I'll attribute it there right now. Happily put it there. Yep, that's where it was. The same tactic has spiraled into the present day, with evolving causes hijacked to once again justify violence. And let me say this once again. In politics, there is no justification for violence. I know we've had plenty of it. We're going to see more of it. I fear it's going to get worse, but this is simply competing ideas. This is you saying potato and me saying patata. If you know the song. This is what killed CEO Brian Thompson and Charlie Kirk. Israeli embassy staffers Yaron Lashinsky and Sarah Milgram. And yet, the media and the Democrat leaders, and when I say the media, I mean the Democrats too, and all of their little administrative stooges, downplay this stuff. They pretend it doesn't exist. And they exaggerate right-wing violence, despite the data that shows it's not nearly as bad, right? And we can look at these guys and we can call them the Luigi left. I mean, Luigi got out there and he acted on it. So we need to back this up. And at the same time, we need to be very aware of something. We're going to have to go after this and stop this. We can't allow violence to be the thing. Ever. Violence is a reaction to a circumstance you cannot get out of any other way. Healthy and whole. That's all it is. That's all violence is. And if you get out there and you do default to violence as your go-to position, then you're the problem, not me. You're the problem. So, this is a huge topic. I mean, they killed a guy just for talking to college students. That's what they did. Charlie Kirk was just talking to college students, and they shot him. And yes, there was one guy that did the shooting, but there was a whole bunch of motivation behind that, a whole bunch of talking points in the same vein as Cole Allen. In that same vein. So, now, Xi Jinping can saber rattle at the United States, but the only one with any goods when they come to the table is Donald Trump. This is News Talk 98.9 WORD. Now, according to reports, President Xi Jinping, he was rattling sabers, talking about the Republic of China and Taiwan with President Trump. And he seemed to be saying if America doesn't handle Taiwan properly, the two countries will clash and put the relationship in great jeopardy. Now, we don't know what that really means. We've always had a lot of strategic ambiguity, which amounts to us defending the Taiwanese autonomy. And I don't think that's going to change, and I don't think Trump wants it to change, and I don't think it's negotiable. And Taiwan, and especially the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, or TSMC, may well be at the center of the world's AI competition. Now, that's a Taiwanese company that's just opened a substantial operation in Phoenix, Arizona, as well as other places in America. So I doubt that Trump wants any of that changed, or worse, give it up to, and I think Mr. Z here is bluffing. Because in recent times, we have ended Chinese influence in Venezuela, the Panama Canal, soon Cuba, and of course, Iran. Communist China buys 90% of Iran's oil and gas exports. But we have a blockade on Iranian ports. China's starving for energy. And they might make a deal with us. But that too remains to be seen if it comes under Scott Bessent's investment board idea. Meanwhile, Trump has elbowed China out of the Middle East and out of the Western Hemisphere. And on top of all of that, China's economy has never recovered from the real estate property crash a couple of years ago. They used to post GDP growth rates of 15% or more, and now that's down to 5% or even less, which is essentially for them a recession. And if they have had bad economic statistics popping up, they haven't been publishing them. And you have to remember that China is communist China, the CCP. Way back in the 80s and the 90s, they flirted with some free market stuff, and that improved their economy, and it generated a functioning private sector. But in the 21st century, most notably under Xi Jinping, the economy has turned back into a tightly run statist enterprise. In world trade, they're very protectionist. They make promises they never keep. And the point here is that China, while they've invested substantially in a strong military, their economy is malfunctioning and their political standing in the world is slipping. Which takes me back to Reagan and Gorbachev. Now, the American economy was booming in the Reagan 80s, and the Soviet economy was collapsing. And Gorbachev wanted Reagan to drop Star Wars, which that turned out to become the Golden Dome. And of course, Mr. Trump's Space Force, but Reagan refused to negotiate Star Wars away. So he told Gorbachev that the strong American economy was producing the resources that he needed to support space defense. And he pointed out that the Soviet economy couldn't match his. That was true then. It's true today. On a per capita basis, American GDP is well over $90,000 per person, which is sort of overshadowed by debt. But, China, on a per person basis, their GDP is just shy of $14,000. So this gives us nearly a 7-fold economic advantage over China. So while Z is out there saber rattling, Trump's the one that can actually make things happen. So I've never see the Russian military in the 80s. We thought the Russians in 84 when I got there. It was so different than 87 when I left. In 84 when I got there, we thought the Russians were going to be partying in France in 24 hours if they came across the border. And then we started hearing things about the Russians and their equipment. And their equipment had issues. They couldn't, so let's say they have 5,000 of anything, 5,000 attack helicopters. How many of those are actually online and ready to go? They had problems with that. If my vehicle was deadlined, I had hours to get it off deadline. We were so in tune with the idea that we had to have as much stuff ready to go as we could. If I had a cavity and I could not be deployed, they sent me to, it didn't matter what I had going on that day. They'd send me to the dental clinic that day. Cavity had to be dealt with. And everything up from there, same motivation, same sense of urgency. Russia never had a chance against us. These Germans never had a chance against us. I don't think the Chinese have a chance against us. Numbers and untested technology mean nothing without experience, and they have none. They have none. The North Koreans, well, they're over there and working with Russians, and they're getting killed. And they're killing themselves rather than be captured. You don't hear about the North Koreans distinguishing themselves in combat. All of this week has been Law Enforcement Week, and we're going to finish it up today with the 4th District U.S. Representative William Timmons. That's coming up next. This is News Talk 98.9 WORD. Law Enforcement Week is always a big week for me because I do support law enforcement, but I always like it when I can get somebody with a little more horsepower than I have that also supports law enforcement. So, joined now by U.S. Representative from the 4th District, William Timmons. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me on.
You betcha. Now, I know you've always been a big proponent of law enforcement. Is there something in your background that ties you to them, to where you realize how much of a boon they are to society as I do?
Well, I was a prosecutor for 5 years in the 13th Circuit there for Greenville and Pickens County. And, the service that they provide is just incredibly important to our entire society, and it's what makes it work. And so I don't understand the people in Congress that are not supportive of them, but the Republicans certainly are. And we had an incredible police week. We had thousands, if not tens of thousands of men and women in blue, and they were all over the Capitol, and we celebrated their service to our country.
So, when we show up, and I know that you have a lot of ties with Upstate Warrior Solutions as well. And so to that end, I mean, I think I've actually interviewed you there one time. To that end, what would you like to see? What would be the best thing the state of South Carolina could do for law enforcement?
Sorry, you broke up.
I'm sorry.
Yep, I got you now.
Okay. So I was asking you, what would be the best thing South Carolina could do for law enforcement, in your opinion?
I don't think South Carolina is a problem. I mean, generally speaking, our state and local government is very supportive of law enforcement. I think the problem is some of these blue states, and they're defunding law enforcement, and they're trying to put money into other programs that just don't work. You got to have consequences for breaking the law, and you got to have deterrence to make sure that people are held accountable and they have a reason to not break the law. It's incredible. I mean, in Washington, D.C., you saw the president brought in 700 National Guard soldiers, and crime went down 90% in a matter of days. So, all you need to have is a deterrent threat. You need to have accountability. People need to know that they're not going to get away with breaking the law, and it's crazy. They don't break the law.
Do you think in the grant, I mean, crime came down last year an astonishing degree. Is it simply from the fact, do you think the criminals, I know the left doesn't recognize law enforcement the way we like to recognize them, but criminals, on the other hand, they don't like consequences. Has the Trump administration put consequences back into crime?
Absolutely. And I think everybody knows that the president supports our law enforcement and supports our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. And, that's important. When the commander-in-chief doesn't have your back, you're vulnerable, and you're kind of skittish. You're afraid to do your job, and that's wrong. So President Trump absolutely has the back of law enforcement and our service members, and it's made a huge difference.
Now, as a prosecutor, I found it interesting that I know you led the way when you were trying to encourage the South Carolina General Assembly in 2020 to invest in body cameras. And body cameras have changed the whole complexion of law enforcement, and actually got it now to where, we know exactly what's going on versus what we used to hear what is going on. As a prosecutor, did you see this as a way to really make your case, to have that kind of evidence?
So it's funny, the left is who started this push to technology, for body cameras, for technology surrounding when your weapons pulled and your tasers pulled. But it actually, they thought they were doing something to kind of like hold law enforcement accountable. What they did is they gave them the security to know that if they implemented their training as they are supposed to, they would be protected, because there was no question as to what happened. And so, and it's also connected. There's different crime centers. There's one in Spartanburg. Greenville's getting one up and running now. But when a law enforcement officer pulls their weapon, it actually triggers their body camera. They don't have to radio anything in there. Their voice is live. They can literally just speak, and they don't have to literally touch their radio. And so the person in the crime center can actually see it. They can activate a drone. They can see who's nearby. They can just implement all these resources so everybody has everybody's back. So technology has totally changed the way that we police. And it's really a huge improvement for the better. And it gives people trust in law enforcement because they know that they're doing the right thing because everything is being recorded in real time and everybody can see it. And, there was some misgivings from certain people initially, but I think now everyone's come to just love it because they know that everybody on their team has real-time access to their data and they can see what's going on. And it's huge. It's a huge step in the right direction.
You introduced something called the Justice Act. Now, this was something where you were trying to get law enforcement and the communities they serve to start talking again. How did that work? Is that still ongoing?
Yeah, it's a work in progress. I mean, making communities and law enforcement as integrated as possible is huge. And it's all about trust. You got to be able to trust the people that are there to protect you. And so anything we can do to facilitate integration into the community is a step in the right direction. And I think that we've made huge strides. And, I think everything's moving in the right direction.
Well, I think that's a one way to go about it. And now, is that more in the blue cities as well?
I think the more densely populated cities have bigger issues with this, but making sure that people know the law enforcement officers that are in their communities, I think is important because, certain communities don't necessarily trust law enforcement. And if you address that at a young age and if you incentivize the interconnectedness between law enforcement and the next generation and develop that trust, and I think that's important. I think, the social media and the media in general are demonizing law enforcement. They're demonizing, different segments of our government, and it's not good. And it's not true. It's not true. I mean, there's always going to be examples of misconduct, few and far between, and 99.9% of the people that are serving our citizens are doing the right thing, and they're doing their best. And so I think developing that trust is very important.
Well, you certainly are active with this stuff, and I didn't even get to cops. Has anybody ever done that? Have you gotten any House members to go do ride-alongs?
Oh yeah, I've done a couple of ride-alongs in the last 2 years. They're actually real fun. I did 2 or 3 as a prosecutor. I've probably done another 2 or 3 as a member of Congress, and we've actually had a couple of very interesting situations. Nothing too crazy, but some things got a little close. So it's important though. Most people don't understand the challenges that law enforcement faces, and want to get home safe to their family, and they want to enforce the rule of law. So it's shocking how often things can get very hairy very quickly. So I think it's important for members of Congress to see it firsthand, and that's why I'm so supportive of our law enforcement members. Well,
I really appreciate you taking the time to join me on Law Enforcement Week. I need to have you on more often just because you're always you are always so prepared. You're one of the guys, Congressman, that I don't think needs his staff to be ready to go into a debate. You're one of the ones that actually, I think you do your studying, and I do appreciate that. And I think we may have lost him. U.S. Representative.
Nope, I appreciate you having me on. Sorry. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. U.S. Representative William Timmons, 4th District. Thank you for joining me today, sir. Coming up next, you do have choices when it comes to the Senate race. And joining me is somebody else running for the Senate. His name is Thomas Mukes. This is News Talk 98.9 WORD. All right. You have choices. You have choices this year in the Senate campaign. I know a lot of you want somebody else, and there is somebody else in there besides other people that you've heard about. So I bring to you, joining us for the first time, simply because I met him the other day, Thomas Dismukes. Good afternoon, sir.
Hello, Bill. I'm wonderful to talk with you, and it was a joy meeting you a couple of days ago. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Now, you weren't even running for the Senate 2 months ago.
Maybe like 3 months ago, but yes, you're correct. I'm a husband to one, a father to five, just a regular guy. That I'm very, very happy with my life. I'm a motivational storyteller, so to speak, but very involved in our communities. Just living a life, and then I really kind of got to the point where I felt like I was the biggest hypocrite in all of South Carolina. Boy, I talked and I complained and I put up a fuss, but I would not put actions where my words were. And it got to the point where, Bill, I was like, okay, something's got to change, and I can't stop. I got to stop complaining about it, and I'm going to act on those things. So I want to fix an issue.
Okay. So, and listen, most people wouldn't do that. You get that, don't you? You understand? You understand? Most people,
yeah.
A lot of people like to complain about things. Very few people are willing to step up and actually get into the breach.
Yes.
Now, have you considered what happens if you were successful?
Wow, that is kind of funny. That's very funny, because I think a lot of people are more afraid of success than they are of failure. But Bill, I'm doing this out of obedience. I feel like I need to do this.
Right.
I want to do it because I want to serve the people. And I know that's not some flighty thing. That I truly believe, and I've looked at other candidates, but there's not a single person on the ballot that actually represents just the common person, the regular family. And either a politician or a multimillionaire trying to buy votes. And again, nothing wrong with money. I get that, but I just want to be represented in Washington. And I feel like there's a huge disconnect between the people who are supposed to be serving us, public servants, and us, just the regular people that just want a voice. And that's what I want to provide. I am free. I'm at a place in my life where I owe no one anything, and
Okay.
I have nothing to prove to anybody. And so
Right.
I'm free, and I want other people to be free too.
Well, I mean, and I'm not meaning to rain on your parade, okay?
You can rain all you want, brother.
But I mean, there's a couple of problems. What I was asking you about is that if you were successful, you would you would be a junior senator, and you're going to be. I mean, you're going to have to scratch and claw and pound
Sure.
and do all this stuff just to try to be relevant in this seniority-based Senate. Now, does that bother you? Does that perturb you in any way?
Bill, I have always lived my life. I won't say as an underdog, but I have lived my life. People have always told me, Thomas, you can't do that. That's impossible. We've tried that before. But that is literally my story of my life. And people say, why don't you run for a local office? But the great American philosopher, Deputy Barney Fife, said it right. He said, nip it in the bud. And I think we have to go to the source. And so that's what I want to go to, the source of these issues. And yes, I'm not being naive. I'll be 1/100th of a third, but someone's got to start somewhere. And
Right.
You got to start it. So otherwise, it is overwhelmingly depressive. And to me, it's almost encouraging, the idea of like, hey, Thomas, you're overwhelmed, because that is literally my life, all of my life. And that doesn't bother me at all. That doesn't scare me. And if anything, that empowers me.
Well, I mean, that's actually about as good an answer as you could answer that with. You understand the formidability that you'd be facing and everything else, and that doesn't seem to perturb you or anything. Now, you got into the race a little bit late. How's it looking? What kind of responses are you getting?
I tell you, Bill, I am overwhelmingly humbled by people's responses of their encouragement to me. I can't tell you how many times I've heard the word, "You're very refreshing." I'm like, what do you mean I'm refreshing? I'm just saying common sense things. I kind of have a little platform called FREE, and I kind of go through it. It's very basic common sense things, but I've overwhelmingly been encouraged by people that thank you for giving me a voice. And so, yes, I agree. It is an overwhelming task. It's a David and Goliath.
Did we lose him? I'm still there. I think I'm still there, right, Lonzo?
Yeah, he's still there. We've been having some phone problems. This is the first time we've experienced it on this show, though.
Okay.
Better response I
There
get.
he is.
And the
There he
longer
is.
my
Okay.
phone's red, it goes left.
We didn't hear some of what you had to say because we were having phone problems just now. But let's move on then, shall we? Now, what would be the one thing that you're looking at right now? If you are Senator Dismukes,
Sure.
in January of 2027, what's the first thing that you're going to try to stick your meat hooks into and start shaking and try to make it better?
Sure. Bill, like I mentioned earlier, we have to go to the source of the issue. And so part of my FREE is F, stands for fiscal responsibility. We have yet to have a balanced budget since 2001. Lindsey Graham has been in since 2003. And so the very person that should have the responsibility, have the ability to make changes is not. And so we are $39 trillion in debt. And it is, I don't even think we're going over the waterfall. We are already over. I don't think we're nearing it. We may be able to be over it. But we are literally affecting our children and our grandchildren's lives. And so each one of us owe now $111,000 each. And so it's overwhelming to me, but you have to start somewhere. And there's multiple ways I would love to start. It's $1 billion here, $1 billion there, which that sounds so crazy to say. It's just a few billion, but you have to start somewhere. And so similar to the broken window theory, if we have to create a mentality of we cannot have this waste, fraud, and abuse, we have to have accountability, we have to have transparency. And again, Bill, it's my fault. It's your fault. It's our fault. We have gotten the government that we have earned and deserved. And so I just refuse to be crazy anymore because I keep voting for the same people over and over again and expecting different results. And so I'm encouraged, but I would love to be able to, can we please at least balance a budget and do what you're there to do? It is your job. And so that's a huge issue to me, along with other things as well. But I feel like that would, if we can get control of that, I think that would help lessen a lot of the crazy rhetoric going on as well.
For anybody that's interested in Mr. Dismukes, his website is justcallmethomas.com. Justcallmethomas.com. He has the acronym FREE there. You can go check out what fiscal responsibility, restore law and order, empower economic growth, and government overreach. That's his goals and his focus.
Yes, sir.
I wish you the most success that you can have out of this. Good luck with this, sir.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you very much for your time and for what you do. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Thomas Dismukes, one of your candidates for U.S. Senate. We send a lot of students to college. We don't prepare any of them for it. This is News Talk 98.9 WORD. Now then, let's talk about Rob Inario, attorney at law. Rob, he's been practicing. 2 weeks ago, millions of high school seniors committed to college. Many with the understanding that a 4-year degree is the next step towards stability and success. But are they being prepared to make that decision in the first place? Your average college graduate now leaves school with roughly $30,000 in student loan debt, and Americans collectively owe more than $1.7 trillion. At the same time, fewer than 2/3 of students who start a 4-year degree finish within 6 years. And for teenagers just beginning adult life, it's one of the largest financial decisions they're ever going to make, often made with limited experience, weighing long-term trade-offs. I don't really know how somebody that young is going to go in somewhere without any sort of preparation and make a good call on a field they want to learn about and then turn into a profession. Around here, right? Around here in 1979, as I was getting ready to graduate, I'd been to Wade Hampton for 3 years. I was at Westside for my senior year. Everybody that I knew, for the most part, was preparing to go to college. Some did, some did not. I don't know how many actually finished it. I never went. I had other plans. A lot of people go to college to make their parents proud. A lot of people go to college to learn a trade, learn a profession or something like that. But if we're not preparing them for college, how can we expect them to pay the debt? And one of the ways for them to be prepared for college would be for them to be on what is the right path for them. And that expectation should be shaping decisions a long time before the students ever step onto a college campus. A lot of families out there think that a 4-year degree is the only option. Trade schools or apprenticeships are never mentioned, and working first and figuring things out later wasn't encouraged, right? Still isn't to this day. Well, that's changing. Nobody, and I remember this quite well, nobody at my high school was asking what I wanted to learn. They wanted to know why I didn't want to go to college. And some people didn't have an answer for that. I had an answer for that. Now, was it the right answer? Turned out not to be, but it was an experience as well. Other people decide to follow that path. I have it, and here's the thing. Based upon my relative immaturity, I believed at that time that maturity was a relative concept. I believed at 18 that I was as smart as I needed to be, and that, of course, was not correct. So why would we expect anybody out there that is following somebody else's advice to be any more advanced, to be where they are prepared? We know that they're prepared. They've chosen the right path, and they're going to go into a field at school that they're going to be able to use for the rest of their life. You get to school, then you learn how to succeed in school. You learn how to write papers in school, how to get grades in school. But what you don't learn in school is how to test an idea, or how to challenge an assumption, or how to build an argument. And remember now, this was all well before Chat GPT and the AI shortcuts. The closest thing we had to that back in those days were Cliff Notes. And you had to read those. But in those days, the real skill wasn't thinking. It was figuring out which arguments earned points and which cost them. And I think in a lot of cases, especially then, just from talking to the people that I know that did go to college. A lot of students become more focused on succeeding within that system, not questioning it. And all of that matters because college is no longer a small decision. It is often described as a safe investment that pays off over time, but students are not always given the tools to evaluate that claim. One question for any field of study should be, what's the return on investment? What are job placement outcomes? Does this field even require a 4-year degree? That doesn't get asked till after the decision's already been made. I know a lot of people that have gone to school, gotten into a field, a professional field, and decided they didn't like it. They went into it because they were pressured to go into it. Then they go back into school. I know somebody came out of school as an architect. She didn't like it. She went back in and she became a veterinarian. In the meantime, employers increasingly emphasize skills and experience over credentials. And industries across the country struggle to find workers with the training they actually need. Now, I believe that the military is actually a good field of endeavor simply because within the military, once you are committed into the military, there's only so many things you can do. So you have to find the thing that you want to do. And then you're committed and you have to go through it. You don't come out of the military owing any debt. You do come out of the military learning self-motivation. And you're getting real world hands-on experience no matter what you're doing. Avionics engineer. Those guys came out of the military with a good job. You know, those kind of things. And even among students who do graduate, the outcome is going to vary depending on what they study and the path they choose afterward. At one point, as a route guy, I wanted to be a wine guy. I wanted to sell wine. I wanted to have a feather duster and put the wine out there and, you know, wear the dress clothes and all the other stuff you see with the wine guys. And when I went to the wine place to try to get a wine job, I already had a job in the route business. This is going to be the easiest job I ever had. They asked me what my degree was in. And I said, what degree? Why do I need a degree to sell wine? And if I'd had a degree in physical education, I could have gotten a job selling wine. But I didn't. So I didn't. And none of this means that college is without value. But for many students, it remains a worthwhile investment. But it's not the only path, and it should not be treated as the only path. And students, your children, your nieces, your nephews, they deserve a clearer picture of the costs and the risks and the alternatives. And they deserve to hear that building a career can take many forms, not just one form. And that includes more exposure to being an apprentice or other pathways that would be stable without the same level of financial risk. And they deserve an education system that prepares them not just to be in college, but to think about whether it is a good choice for them. We build a culture that treats college as a default rather than a decision. And we have a lot of people out there right now today that are in debt up to their eye sockets. A lot of young people. How do we save them? How do we help them out? Something to think about. Here we are. This is the end of National Police Week, and not a single Democrat has been at any of the congressional vigils for the fallen. This is News Talk 98.9 WORD. So this has been Law Enforcement Week, and 363 names were added to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial this year. 363 dads or mothers or brothers or sisters or uncles or aunts, neighbors. They're gone. They won't be back. They're not going to be there when you need them anymore. No beers over the fence. No waves at the mailbox. They won't be there in the dark anymore when the kids are frightened. Or when a heartbroken parent or spouse just wants to hear that precious voice one more time, just one more time. Coming from the Monroe County Sheriff's Office on X, Police Week 2026. As we mark Police Week, the nation remembers and honors our fallen law enforcement officers from across the country this evening during the 38th annual Candlelight Vigil in Washington, D.C. Unfortunately, 363 names of U.S. law enforcement officers who have died in the line of duty are added to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial this year. Please remember them and the sacrifice they paid in the name of public safety and service. You should remember them. These are the good guys. They're not just the good guys with guns. They're the guys who talk you off the ledge when you need to be talked off the ledge. They're the ones who get the car open when the baby's locked in the car or the dog. They're the ones that run to trouble when you run away. They run at it. They take it to the edge to save you or to save yours, no matter the risk to themselves. Brandon Tatum, you may know him from YouTube as Officer Tatum. On X, a Chattanooga cop rescues a mother and her 2 children from a burning apartment, and the Ring doorbell footage is incredible. Officer Eli Rogers arrived to find flames blocking the front door and a family trapped inside. He didn't wait. He went in, he got them, and he made sure everyone survived. And Mom, whose name was Rachel Blaylock, said, I tried to thank him. That's my whole world. That's my daughter. He just saw people he had to save. Coming from PragerU on X, are cops perfect? Of course not. No one should expect them to be. But every single day, under the most difficult conditions, the police protect us from the bad guys. From Tree Hugging Sister on X, God bless the folks who saw those babies and called police, and the cops were so good with those little ones. Talking about in Georgia, where they saved 2 toddlers roasting in a car that reached an internal temperature of 117 degrees. $363 beloved and mourned people. So many of these guys, I mean, every single one of them that I know anyway, are willing to do whatever the situation calls for, even if it means they don't come home. They want you to be able to go home. Coming from the rabbit hole on X, Wokies. Body cams will expose how bad cops are. Reality, body cams make cops look good. The Trump White House had a back the blue tweet, on X, out to celebrate the week. And J.D. Vance was doing events with officers who seemed pretty tickled to be with him. And to honor National Police Week, 173 Democrats voted against the resolution supporting law enforcement. Coming from the Republican Study Committee on X, 173 Democrats just voted against a resolution. This is the week we honor the officers who made the ultimate sacrifice, and they can't put their defund the police sentiments aside. Not a single Democratic congressperson, not one, joined the House colleagues' vigil on the steps of Congress later that evening. Not one. These are craven, despicable cowards that suck. And that's all there is to it. And that's all there is to them. And to the blue, thank you. Stay safe. And God bless you. Coming up next, it is the Charlie James Show. This is News Talk 98.9 WORD, the voice of the Carolinas.